July 1974, Las Vegas Boulevard South. Inside the Stardust Resort and Casino, a man carries a metal tray of currency across a windowless room and sets it on a scale. He weighs the coins instead of counting them. He writes one number on a form. He slides a portion of the cash to the side. By every measure a gaming control agent could record, the Stardust is a legal casino in a legal city. The books balance, the taxes are paid, the lights stay on. So where did the rest of the money go? The Stardust had opened on July 2nd, 1958. It held the largest casino floor in the state and a sign that could be read from 3 miles down the highway. For years it passed from operator to operator, each one respectable on paper. In 1974, it changed hands again. The buyer was a 32-year-old businessman from San Diego named Alan Glick. His company was called Argent. He had no record in the gambling business. Glick did not pay with his own money. The financing came from the Teamsters Central States Pension Fund, the retirement savings of hundreds of thousands of truck drivers. The loans ran past $60 million. The loan did not happen on its own. A Chicago insurance consultant named Alan Dorfman controlled access to the pension fund. He decided which projects the drivers' savings would build. He answered to the same men who would later count the skim. The money at the center of it was not the casinos alone. It came from working people who would never see a craps table. Their retirement built a machine that stole from them. They bought 4 casinos at once: the Stardust, the Fremont, the Hacienda, the Marina. On paper, Alan Glick owned all of them. On paper, Alan Glick was in charge. In practice, another man ran the Stardust floor. His name was Frank Rosenthal. Everyone called him Lefty. Rosenthal held no gaming license. His title on the payroll was food and beverage manager. His real job was everything: the odds, the hiring, the machines, the count. He had come up in Chicago as a sports handicapper. The FBI had a file on him that went back years. The men he answered to did not live in Nevada. They lived in the Midwest in 4 separate cities, and they shared one very specific interest: a single room inside the Stardust, the count room. Every casino has one. It is where the day's cash is gathered, sorted, weighed, and recorded before the state calculates its tax. In the Stardust, the room had a locked door, a short list of names allowed inside, and scales for the coins. 2 employees signed for every tray. A third recorded the totals. On paper, the process was airtight. The skim happened there before the money reached any official book. The method was patient, and it was mechanical. Coins pulled from the slot machines were weighed rather than counted one by one. A scale set to read light turned real weight into a smaller number. The difference never left the room on paper. The trick lived inside a machine called a weigh scale. Slot coins were poured in by the bucket and turned into a dollar figure by weight. Adjust the calibration, and the same coins reported less. The state trusted whatever number the machine gave. Paper currency was handled the same way. Stacks were lifted from the trays before the official tally began. What the count never recorded, the state could never tax. A casino executive named Carl Thomas understood the count better than almost anyone on the Strip. He was trusted, he was careful. He explained, on a recording he did not know existed, the right way to take the money and the wrong way. The wrong way left a gap that an auditor could find. The right way looked like an ordinary night. The cash left the building in small amounts and simple containers: paper bags, suitcases, the lining of a coat. The couriers were casino men and trusted friends. They carried the cash themselves, by car and by plane, packed like ordinary luggage. It went to Chicago, it went to Kansas City, it went to Milwaukee, and to Cleveland. Each city held a percentage that had been set long before. The arrangement was old. The arithmetic did not change. Investigators would later put the loss in the millions of dollars a year, taken quietly from a single room. The men who received the money were disciplined. They were careful on the telephone. They assumed always that someone might be listening. In Kansas City, someone was. The FBI had opened a separate case against a local crime family led by a man named Nick Civella. Agents received court permission to hide microphones where the family talked business. They listened for months. The case had not started in Las Vegas at all. It began with a gambling investigation in the Midwest. The microphones were meant to catch a local ring. Instead, they caught a conversation about a casino. What came back on the tapes was not only about Kansas City. It was about a casino far out in the Nevada desert. The Bureau named the investigation Operation Strawman. The Strawman was Alan Glick, the visible owner who stood in for men who could never hold a license of their own. On the recordings, the skim was discussed like any other business: shares, shipments, sharp complaints when a delivery came up short. One man kept written records of it all. His name was Tuffy DeLuna. His associates called him Tuffy. He logged the operation in a careful hand with dates, initials, and dollar figures. He recorded who was owed and who was paid. He treated a criminal conspiracy like a set of books. The notes were almost unbelievable in their detail. They listed cities by code. They tracked shortfalls to the dollar. A prosecutor could read them like a company ledger because that is what they were. When agents finally searched, they found the notes. The notes matched the tapes. The tapes matched the missing money. When the couriers were finally caught, some of them chose to talk. What they described matched the tapes and the notes exactly. 3 separate records now told one story. Back in Las Vegas, the arrangement had begun to crack from the inside. Frank Rosenthal had become too visible. In 1976, the Nevada Gaming Commission refused him a license outright. He kept running the floor under a new job title. The fight spilled into the papers and onto the air. He hosted a talk show broadcast from inside his own casino. The men in the Midwest wanted quiet. Rosenthal was the opposite of quiet. There was also the enforcer. His name was Anthony Spilotro, sent from Chicago to protect the operation on the ground. He built a crew of his own and a reputation to match. His crew earned headlines for a string of burglaries across the valley. Each one pulled more federal attention toward the operation they were sent to protect. The man sent to guard the secret was now the reason people were looking. On the night of October 4th, 1982, Frank Rosenthal finished dinner at a restaurant on East Sahara Avenue and walked to his car. He sat down. He turned the key. The Cadillac exploded. Rosenthal lived. A steel plate under the driver's seat, built into that model at the factory, took the force of the blast and pushed it away from him. He climbed out of the fire and survived. No one was ever charged for the bomb. By then, the federal case was nearly finished. The indictments arrived in stages across more than one city and more than one court. The government charged them under a law written for exactly this: an enterprise run as a business on a pattern of crime. The Stardust was the enterprise. The skim was the pattern. In Kansas City, the leaders of the Civella family were charged with skimming the Stardust and its sister casinos. The proof was the tapes, the notes, and couriers who had finally agreed to talk. Then the case climbed higher. In 1985 and 1986, the bosses of Chicago, Kansas City, Milwaukee, and Cleveland were tried together in federal court. They were the men at the top of the 4 cities. They were the men who had taken a share for years. The government proved that they had run a Las Vegas casino from 1,000 miles away. It proved they had stolen from it in cash week after week for most of a decade. It proved that the straw man had always been exactly that. They were convicted. The sentences ran into the decades. Alan Glick gave up his casinos and testified for the prosecution. Carl Thomas, the man who taught the count, was convicted and barred from the business he had mastered. Frank Rosenthal left the state and never held a casino job again. The scandal reached past the Strip. New oversight was forced onto the Teamsters Fund. The age of one man deciding where the money went was ending. Anthony Spilotro did not live to hear the final verdict. In June 1986, he and his brother were found buried in an Indiana cornfield. The Stardust kept its doors open for another 20 years under new owners and tighter rules. Cameras watch the count room now. Agents watch the cameras. The room that had made the skim possible became one of the most observed spaces in the building. On March 13th, 2007, the Stardust was imploded. The largest sign on the Strip went dark. The tower folded into itself and was gone in seconds. The count room came down with it. Somewhere in that rubble was the space where a man had once carried a tray of cash to a scale, written down a smaller number, and set the rest aside. For years, the weight read light. For years, the money moved east. For years, no one could prove where it went. They counted everything in that room but one number. The true total was never counted.